Alright, this is gonna be sort of episode 1.5 of the combat tutorial series. It's not really episode 2, because episode 2 is gonna be mainly focused on like stunning, animations and things like that. But this episode is mainly gonna be focused on the organization and sort of setup of that. So we're gonna be doing ModuleScripts today. I'm gonna show you how to use them. So on the documentation, it gives you a really clear description of what ModuleScripts are, which what you do is you use require on them, and the main takeaway or the main reason people use them is for this: don't repeat yourself, and it allows you to use them globally. It allows you to write a function only once, but you can use it everywhere. So, for example, if I go in Studio and I create a module script in ReplicatedStorage, we can call this like a test function, right? So right off the bat, when you create a module script, you will see these two lines: local module and local return module. In every single module script, you'll always need to return something, whether it be a function or a table. So for example, you can do return function like this, or you can do return empty table like this and add things inside of it. But the general rule of thumb is you just adhere to the already created thing. So in order to create a function in a module script, we can do function module dot let's say test function, the name of the script. And here we can say test function was called. Now, in order to be able to access the module script, it says for us to use require. So let's create a local script in doesn't even matter. Let's create it in Starter GUI. Now, as you've seen in the previous video, you always have to instance your services. Generally, okay, you don't need to do this, right? But it looks much better than doing this dot test function or anything else like that. So generally you should do this, get service, and then of course remember this is on the client, so usually things aren't fully loaded in yet, so remember to use your wait for child. So local test function module, or you can call this whatever you want, equals require. Yep, so returns the value that was returned by the module script. So require replicated storage wait for child test function. Now, running this on its own won't do anything. In order to actually get this to print, you need to call the function inside of here. So we can do test function module dot test function. Now, once you do that, it'll print this up. So if we play the game, you see that test function was called. Now, ModuleScript can store anything that you want. It does not need to be solely functions and things like that. You can store tables, for example. So function module.testTable equals this. Oops, not function. Do not know why I did that. But module.testTable equals table. Now we can add our values in here, like false, true, test1, test2. And if you print out the table, so you can say print test function module dot test table, which it auto completes for you, which is good, so you know what your actual properties of the table of the module are. Now once you print that out, you'll see that it actually prints out the table for you. So the main point I'm trying to make is that ModuleScripts can store anything that you want. It's not only subjected to functions. Now, knowing that, we can add a lot of compatibility with different weapons in the combat system. So for example, right here, this is sort of like the generalized formula for fist combat, or any combat that you want. But let's say you have like multiple different type of combats, like fist, sword, spear, dagger. you'll want the hitboxes, stunning, and things like that to be different. So in order to do that, we can create different module scripts that work differently. And this comment system can require those module scripts to run. So let's add a folder in here called weapons. And then we can create a module script in here called fist. Now, generally I don't really like to call it local module equals this. I'd rather say local weapon type, because this is a weapon type. Fist is a weapon type. So now we can create a function called weapon type.attack. Now we can just drag all of this over into that attack. Now immediately right off the bat, you'll see a lot of underscores, underlines, things like that, because we need to actually reference the variables in here. So we can say we want the character in here, which is the main thing, and you see it's underlines assets and debris because we need to actually get those services and the variable. So equal debris, and get the replicated storage as well, and then local assets. Now everything's fixed regarding this. Now, in order to actually, because we don't know what type of weapon the player has yet. So in order to do that, for this type of comment system, the basics, we'll just use tools. So let's create a tool in the starter pack called fist. Now let's make sure that can be dropped equals false, because you don't want to drop your weapon. That's kind of stupid. So we'll uncheck that. And we'll uncheck requires handle, because what requires handles does is it expects there to be a part in here called handle that the player can hold out. So if we turn this on and we do this, you see that there's a part that's held out. However, we don't really want a part being held out for your fist. We just want the server to be able to see what type of tool you have that corresponds to the module. So we can uncheck requires handle, and then in here we can keep all of this, but now we want to actually reference and require these weapon modules. So we can say local weapon modules equals script.parent.weapons. So hierarchically wise, this is script.parent, which is systems.weapons. So if you think about it that way, you won't mess up your variable names and how you reference them. So now we want to require them. So there's something called caching, which just stores all of your modules. So we can call this cached modules equals an open table or an empty table. Then we can get the children of this folder right here and require them. So for underscore comma module in weapon modules GetChildren do. Now, what I want to point out is the difference between GetChildren and GetDescendants. So let's go over here to documentation, and let's get this right here. All right, so essentially GetChildren returns an array containing all of the instances direct children. So, excuse me, so the direct children of this weapons folder is fist. However, if I were to add another module script in here called whatever we want, like that, GetChildren will skip this. It won't get that because GetChildren only returns the direct children of the folder. So, however, GetDescendants returns an array containing everything in the instance. So it returns a child of the child. So if we add another module script in here, which isn't ideal, but I'm just trying to make a point. then GetDescendants will get every single module script that's available. But GetChildren only gets the direct instances. So it'll get this, it'll get this, but it won't get this. So let's remove these and let's go back. And then we can say if module is a module script, then, because we want to make sure the module is actually a module script. Because if we require like a part or something, it's going to break. So now we can say cache modules module.name is equal to require module. So essentially what this table will look like once everything is required is something like this. So local modules required, I spelled that wrong, but fist is equal to the required module, like this. This is what the cache modules will look like once everything is required. So let's play the game. Nothing should happen now, but you see your tool called fist. If you equip the tool, you see that the tool gets equipped to the character, or gets added to the character's children. And if you unequip, it gets removed. So using that, we can say local found tool equals character find fist child, which is tool. That should be self-explanatory. And another thing I want to point out is Roblox is severely case sensitive. So if we do this, it will not work at all. So always remember to either find the autofill or make sure that you're not misspelling or making this lowercase or anything like that. So we can say if found tool, then, because you can't equip two tools at once. You can only equip one. So this is effective because of that. So now let's check if the cache modules has the tool in it. In this case, fist would be fist, corresponded to the weapons module. So local if found tool, then local found module equals cache modules found tool dot name, which is fist, the name of the tool. So if found module, then found module dot attack. And then of course, since we need a character argument passed into here, we need to pass the character in here, like so. Now, I want to point out that this variable can be named anything. It can be named this, abba, baba, or whatever. It doesn't affect the argument that you pass into here. The name of this is solely for you to know what you're referencing, which is a character. So, once we do this, it should work. So if we play the game, you see that if we hold left click, nothing happens. But if we equip the tool and we hold it, it works. And of course, if you walk up to here, you see that he's taking damage slowly. However, if I unequip the tool, then it stops hitting. So that is good. Now, what we also want to do is make a weapons data module in the replicated storage. So essentially weapon data will hold all of the shared data, which I mentioned in the other video, between that we want the client and server to access at the same time. So we can call this local weapon data, return weapon data, and then we also, one thing. Hold on, let me name this weapon data module. One thing I want to notice to y'all is if there is a sort of loop or anything in here that's not a function, then once you will need to require it for it to run, basically. So what I mean is, let's say print hi. Let's say something like this. Yeah. So print hi. This print will print regardless whether you call a function or anything like that. It will print immediately once you require it. So if I were to require weapon data, let's reference it. And let's do local weapon data equals require modules.weapondata. So you see, once I require it, it'll immediately print high like that. So knowing that, we can create a ton of modules in here. Let's call this fist, which will hold the shared data for fist. And then we can say for underscore comma module in script GetChildren do. Just the same thing as the server side. Then stored data. Let's call it that. Weapon data that stored data module.name equals require module. It's essentially the same thing as we did up here, but we're just trying to store all of these modules that will soon be added. So now in here we can store things like how much damage you want it to. So module.damage is equal to, let's say 10 or 20. Now we exit out of this script. And then you'll notice that if we do print weapon data.stored data, it'll print out all of the data that was required. Because remember, ROBLOX compiler always runs from the top to the bottom. So first line to the very last line. So this will run in a sequential order. So if I play the game, you'll see that everything is required. So damage equals 20. So if I were to exit out of this, or remove the print, and go to the fist attacking module, we can require weapon data. Now, you might be wondering, how do we access the fist module, or the shared fist module? So one way we can do that is by just saying local fist module dot store data dot fist. That's sort of inefficient in a way. Not inefficient, but it doesn't look great. So one way we could do it is do function weapon data dot get weapon data, like so. Now we can say weapon name, oh, it all completed, but weapon name string. Now remember the previous video I discussed about annotations, which essentially tells the compiler what type of data type the weapon name is, which in this case it's a string. So we can say return weapon data.stored data weapon name or no. So if it finds it, then it returns it. Otherwise, it just returns no. So now we can say local, oops, wrong script. In the fist module, we can say local, let's do this. Instead of doing require, we can say require dot get weapon data, like so. Now we can say require get weapon data script dot name. So essentially we're getting the fist shared weapon data right here. So now we can scroll down here and replace the take damage with the value in here, the damage value in here. So we can say weapon data dot damage, like so. Now if we were to play the game, we'll see that it should take 20 damage per, yep, like so. So this is efficient in one of two ways. For one, you don't need to scroll through a long script, especially when we add things like animation, stunning, and things like that. You don't want to scroll through like 300 or 400 lines just to find the take damage and change it to like 5, 10, or 20 or something like that. All you need to do is go to the weapon data module and just change it in here. So we can say, change it to like 1 damage or something like that. In the future, we can also add things like module dot stun time equals like 0.25 seconds, things like that. But for now, we'll just focus on damaging and the rest in the later videos. So if we play the game, knowing that we changed it to 1, you'll see that the health is reduced very slowly. Like so. Now, that should be, I think that wraps up the end of this video. It was kind of short in a way, but that's kind of because I have exams tomorrow. But I just wanted to get a video out just for y'all to understand how ModuleScripts work and what you can do with them, how efficient they are. So you don't do the, so you can adhere to the don't repeat yourself principle. So you don't need to spam functions, things like that. You'll just reference the ModuleScript once and call the function. Like so, get weapon data here, and then you can just get weapon data like that. And that's pretty much it. This video was just sort of for organization purposes for the future. But yeah, the next video I'll show you how to do stunning, handling animations, and things like that.